Knobloch's Dance presents Dance Behind the Screen, process production and social media. Hey knowers, welcome to our podcast. We are Knobloch's Dance, a social media-based company. We strive to say no to the box. We connect interdisciplinary art, technology, and artists to re-envision the process of art making and sharing.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Dance Behind the Screen podcast. We're your co-host, Azaria.
And this is Martheya. On today's episode, we talk with registered dietitian nutritionist Rachel Fine, who is the creator of The Healthy Dancer. She is an internationally recognized registered dietitian nutritionist, and like I mentioned, the creator of The Healthy Dancer. This is the only certified program for dancers. She also founded To The Pointe, spelled like point shoes, Nutrition in 2013 with the mission to provide certified nutrition education to dance and fitness professionals of all ages and levels. As a certified specialist in sports nutrition and a certified counselor of intuitive eating, Rachel combines her expertise in performance nutrition with a non-diet approach to eating.
Yeah, we covered a lot of really important topics today, including eating disorders, myths about how you should be eating, and ways to just change your mentality around food so that you have better performance as a dancer and just a better mindset.
We hope you guys enjoy this episode and you enjoy our topic of the month, wellness.
Hi, Rachel. It's great having you with us today.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Really excited to have this discussion with you girls.
And how have you been holding up with this whole pandemic?
I'm trying to hold up. Honestly, I'm just trying to get by. I'm one who likes to have routine and to be out and about and in my schedule. And, obviously that's kind of all gone out the window. I also have a 3.5-year-old at home. So that's been a little bit tough with homeschooling and even coordinating my own work schedule. But, listen, we all got to do what we got to do. So really just trying to get through it.
Yeah, I definitely understand. Well, we're just going to jump right in. And I think one of the biggest questions, I think, for us and also our students and other dancers, what is the definition of a healthy dancer or health?
I like to think of a healthy dancer, as someone who is in the world of nutrition and wellness and also in the world of dance. I think it's very easy for us to think of the word healthy and always equate it to what's on our plate and what's going into our body in regards to fueling our performance. So we always really focus on this physical end of health, whether that be cross training, working on our technique, or again, what foods we're choosing to put into our body. But when I talk about what being a healthy dancer is, especially with the dancers that are working with me, or even with the dancers that just follow me on Instagram or Facebook, I really try and focus on the idea that health encompasses so much more than just the physical end, that food also plays a role in our mental health and our emotional health, which also tie into how we end up performing as a dancer. You can focus so stringently on that physical end and focus on healthy eating and fueling your body with the quote unquote right nutritious foods. But if you're doing that to an extreme, it's going to take a toll on you mentally and emotionally to the point where you're going to feel limited in these other aspects of your life. So that, in my opinion, is not what a healthy dancer is. A healthy dancer is taking into account all three of these realms of our well-being, the physical, the mental, and the emotional, and how food really plays a role in each of these.
So you really take a holistic approach to health and nutrition then?
Yeah, definitely. Because, focusing on food is obviously a big part of it. As a licensed dietitian, I am technically, without sounding too boastful, an expert in food and nutrition. But I've come to learn just in my experience that dancers, especially those who have a tendency to be type A perfectionists, they can take the idea of food as fuel and they can run with that to an extreme. Sometimes we think we know this as clean eating, and I know we're going to talk about that. But that is not taking into account the other aspects of our life. I mean, there's more to food than just fueling our body. Food is cultural, food is social, food fills our life experiences, and all of that plays a role in our emotional and mental well-being as well. So yes, it's definitely this more holistic, whole approach to what being a healthy dancer is all about.
Rachel, what do those conversations look like with your patients, or I guess how you share on social media, talking about the importance of the influence of food in all those three realms? I feel like you articulated it so clearly, but could you kind of unpack that further? So not just supporting the ability to be physical, but how does food really affect the mental health and the emotional health?
I think that's a really good question. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
No, you're totally fine.
But, sometimes I'll ask a dancer who's a little bit stuck in regards to, remember when I said that it's very common for dancers to have a bit of a type A personality? I'm one of those dancers.
Yes, me too. All of us here.
Okay. So it's very easy for us to fall into an all or nothing mindset, black and white mindset.
Yes.
And we have a difficult time finding comfort in this gray area. So when I'm talking to a dancer and I'm educating them about the benefits of protein for muscle building and complex carbohydrates for their energy and unsaturated fats for reducing inflammation, that information is super important for a dancer's body and a dancer's well-being, and thus for their performance physically on stage. But they can now take that to an extreme and get nervous about, well, where does a brownie sundae fit into it, right? Where does a trip to the ice cream store with my family fit into it? And it's important to realize that, and I'll ask a dancer, what's missing from this equation right now? I mean, you're doing everything, quote unquote, right. You're eating A, you're eating B, you're eating C, you're fueling yourself well, you're fueling yourself sufficiently, but there's a major missing factor here because you are missing out on life experiences, or you're suffering from a great deal of anxiety around these situations. And that's usually what the conversation looks like, is really digging into these other aspects of life other than food as fuel, right? Digging into these other aspects of life and asking a dancer what's causing the anxiety around going out to dinner with your friends without having to research the menu ahead of time, right? What's causing the anxiety about going to a party? Like, I'll have a dancer who is struggling with every weekend she has a sweet 16 to go to. And she's struggling because she doesn't know what to eat at these parties. Usually maybe it's fun foods like fries and chicken tenders. And, where do those foods fit into fueling our performance? Well, you know what? Maybe they fuel our mental and emotional well-being.
So what part, I guess, do you direct sometimes to some of your patients to go to more like cognitive behavioral therapy, or I guess, like, what does that look like in terms of your role as a nutritionist versus somebody who is a therapist?
So it's very dependent on the severity.
Because they seem so like interconnected. Sorry to interrupt.
They are.
Yeah.
No. They are very interconnected. And I will be the first one to tell a dancer that, again, depending on the severity of the case, not every dancer I work with deals with this. Sometimes I work with dancers who truly just want to learn about nutrition, and they're okay with that gray area. Not every dancer struggles with that. But if a dancer is struggling with or with balancing like the more fun or the unplanned experiences with the more outlined planned experiences, I'll be the first to say that we need to incorporate an interdisciplinary approach to our work together. And that's where we're going to bring in the help of a mental health professional. So that's very common in the work that I do. I very much am a big believer of staying in your lane, because as a dietitian, I see it often where there will be a lot of professionals out there, other types of professionals, like, I mean, any type of professional. Maybe it's a fitness professional and they'll give nutrition advice. And it can be a little bit frustrating because that advice may or may not be so sound. And it's important to have advice that is scientifically based and based on evidence. And I feel that we all are experts in our own realm. So I don't try to play expert in the mental health realm. If that is what a dancer needs, then I will be the first one to not just recommend, but actually require for some of the dancers that work with me that they are working alongside a mental health professional as an interdisciplinary approach. Now, that being said, I definitely have strategies in my work with dancers and alongside these mental health professionals. We all work together, like I said, in an interdisciplinary approach to work on these behaviors. Most often that does look like cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT. So I am very familiar with that. But again, it depends on the severity of the dancer's specific situation. If there is no evidence of either diagnosed eating disorder or just severe disordered eating, because there is a difference between those two, then I do feel comfortable working with that dancer without the addition of a mental health therapist. But if, the second I feel that is needed, that is something that I not only recommend, but often will require.
Okay. Thank you, Rachel. So I want to come back to some of these things a little bit later, but maybe we can backtrack a bit and talk a little bit more about what you do with To The Pointe Nutrition and Dance Nutrition and just all the wonderful resources you share. So you have an ebook and articles on your blog, so many videos, your Instagram, and we'll make sure to tag all of that in our show notes. As I was preparing for this interview, I watched this video and there was like a corresponding article about 5 tips from a psychotherapist dealing with the ideal dancer body image. And there was recommended like shortening meal time, comparison, exposure, relabeling bad days, enhancing other aspects. And we'll link all of that so that you guys can check it out too. But what is your experience working with clients and navigating these expectations and specifically eating disorders? And you mentioned there's a difference earlier between 2 types of eating disorders. Could you refresh my memory on the terminology in that? Disordered eating was one of them.
You are listening to Navox Dance.
Okay, there are, I just want to clarify, diagnosed eating disorders. There are multiple types of diagnosed eating disorders, more than just 2, the 2 most common being anorexia nervosa and bulimia.
Right.
That is different. Those diagnoses have been clearly outlined in the medical literature, or specifically the diagnostic manual. Okay, they've been clearly identified where we can pull out specific, I don't want to say the word identify again. Hold on. I'm sorry.
Just like factors of,
there's
or signals or?
Yes. There's specific signs, symptoms, signals, however you want to call it, that we can identify if and when someone is struggling with one of these diagnosed disorders. And there's also very clear, I'm sorry that I'm blanking on this a little bit. You know what? I'm just going to kind of edit that out a little bit and kind of just stop at, there's very clear signs and signals when it comes to diagnosed eating disorders and identifying them and diagnosing them. But then there's this whole other realm of disordered eating. Disordered eating can be, it's a little bit hard to really blanket statement what disordered eating is, because I think that so many of us clinicians can have different views of what it might be. To a certain extent, disordered eating is conditioned in our culture, alongside diet culture. You know, we are told from a young age that it's normal to watch your calories and count your calories. And I mean, you could just go down the grocery store. You could just go to the grocery store and walk down the aisles and be bombarded with calorie counts, and messages like losing weight, low fat this or sugar free that. So disordered eating as it relates to diet culture is somewhat conditioned in our society. So there's this very gray area of what we consider to be disordered eating. Then you have something like orthorexia. Orthorexia is not yet identified as a diagnosed eating disorder, but for the most part, in the, I would say, medical community, we do see orthorexia as having a major negative impact on someone's physical and mental and even emotional.
Rachel, could I pause you real quick? I feel like a lot of our viewers or listeners might not be familiar with orthorexia. Could you explain what that is exactly?
Yes, of course. So orthorexia is the basic obsession with healthy eating. And this is kind of what I was talking about before. Like when we take, for example, the idea of fueling our body, quote unquote, the right way, or just wanting to, quote unquote, eat healthy. It's taking that to the extreme and not leaving any room for error. Error may be looking like eating sweets, enjoying a brownie sundae, fun foods that someone wouldn't normally think of as being for the purpose of their health and or performance.
So for people who might be listening right now, and perhaps I'm not asking you to, I guess, diagnose anybody, but if they already are diagnosed or people do feel just kind of lost in their ability to have a healthy relationship with food, what advice do you have on revamping their relationship?
Yeah, I think the first step is realizing that your current behaviors are not sustainable. And for whatever reason that you might be, because some people might not necessarily know whether or not their eating behaviors are disordered or not. So I think it's a matter of asking yourself, can I continue with this for however long it might be? Am I finding that I'm able to restrict myself, whether that means restricting calories or not? That could just mean restricting your types of food choices. Like perhaps maybe you're following a plan that's like, you know what, I'm only going to eat one sweet every Saturday afternoon. And if you feel that, come Wednesday or Thursday or Friday, all you can think about is that experience that you're going to have on Saturday, how is that benefiting you? Like obsessive thoughts, for example, obsessive thoughts about food is a perfect symptom, I feel, of disordered eating. And it's something that many people can either, relate to or not relate to. But those who can relate to it, that's who I'm talking to right now, about trying to really become self-aware that there might be a little bit of a problem here that you can work on, because you don't have to live life constantly thinking about your next meal and worrying about your next meal. So in regards to like, what can you do? Because it can be scary. And there's a lot of factors that can play in, especially in a time like now where financial resources are limited. It's kind of funny is because usually in our normal world, time, I would say, is the biggest constraint for going to see a dietitian or a nutritionist. But now I would say it's financial, even though financial is always another big factor,
Right.
especially now with so many being furloughed, right? Financial constraints is a big factor of what might be preventing someone to see a dietitian or even a therapist, mental health therapist. So I'll be honest, this is exactly why I created dancenutrition.com. because dancenutrition.com is a completely free resource. I post articles on there weekly, and I dive into very common questions that dancers have. Like just this past week, I dove into the biggest question: how many calories should I be eating during the day? Questions like, should I be trying intermittent fasting or the keto diet? Or how do I build a balanced plate? A lot of this I cover, and it's all free and accessible for dancers. I also cover it on my YouTube channel where I create those, like you said, those videos. But if you really want to take it even a step further without having to worry yet about the financial cost, well, then head over to those free resources, those free guides that I have. I have downloadable guides on dancenutrition.com that you can access, and they're free, and they're downloadable workbooks that you can kind of work through and just, see where you're at with. One is about body confidence, to really assess where you're at with your body confidence, or with building balanced meals and snacks, with food rules. I help you kind of identify what food rules you might be living with right now in my starter workbook. Now I even have a free course about nutrition supplements, because that's another big topic in our world. So all of that is on dancenutrition.com, and I try and do a really concrete job when it comes to this outreach, because I truly do understand that financial constraints plays a huge role in a dancer's ability to reach out for help. Now, again, if you want to take it a step further than that, then we can look at those ebooks that I have. I have multiple ebooks, and at a varying price ranges, from as low as $9.99 to prices like $20. So these can be more economical options for dancers to just help to guide them through certain situations during their year. So for example, I have an ebook dedicated to your summer intensives. I also have an ebook dedicated to the winter workshop season and Nutcracker. And then I have ebooks dedicated to those who want to perhaps, or maybe considering following a plant-based lifestyle like veganism or vegetarianism. So those are all available, and those are my more economical options. Now I have more resources, but then it's just going to kind of go up a level in the finance department.
Right.
I have dancers who work with me one-on-one through my program, which is called the Healthy Dancer. And dancers can either take this program on their own as their own online course, or they can sign up for what I call the elite level, which is where they're taking this online course alongside meeting with me at least 3 times one-on-one. So we can work on their specific individual boundaries and recommendations to get them to where they need to be. And from there, most often with the dancers I'm working with, they continue to follow up, but it all depends on their specific case and situation.
Okay, so I have a question. What about for the dancer who's constantly getting injured, who's constantly in kind of the swings of energy, has no clue that it has any relationship to their food? What are some of the common mistakes that dancers make around food that they might not know that they're even making?
Don't forget to say no to the box.
So that's a really good question. I think a major mistake with a lot of dancers that I see is exercise and dance is known to naturally blunt our hunger throughout the day. So I'll see a lot of dancers kind of like snacking here and there throughout their day, throughout their classes, their rehearsals, and then they get home at the end of the day and they're famished. And they are pretty much, eating everything in sight because they're hungry, rightfully so. Their body is basically making up for everything that they kind of didn't get in earlier in the day. So not eating enough consistently throughout the day is a major problem I see that a lot of dancers are unaware of because they genuinely just might not feel hungry during the day. And it's important to realize that sometimes as a busy dancer, we might not be able to really rely on our hunger cues, which is interesting because a major part of the work I do is teaching dancers to actually tune into their intuitive feelings of hunger and fullness. But for dancers who are extremely busy and going from point A to point B, to point B to point C, they genuinely might not be able to rely on those hunger cues, which is why implementing more of a meal plan throughout the day can be very beneficial for them. Another mistake I'll see is just dancers not really knowing how to balance what they eat. So they might eat like an apple here, pretzels there, maybe some popcorn. And like I said before, they're kind of just snacking throughout the day. Well, all of that's going to provide some energy for you, but it's not really going to provide long-lasting energy. And it's important to think of balance when it comes to balancing the macronutrients, those being protein, fats, and carbohydrates. So, for example, pairing your fruit with some nut butter will make for a more sustainable snack. So for those dancers who really just don't quite know, or maybe they don't really fall into that disordered eating realm, but rather they just fall into more of somewhat of a lack of knowledge around nutrition. Well, honestly, they'll very much benefit from my program, The Healthy Dancer, because the whole program really focuses on teaching dancers how to build balanced lifestyles and how to build a balanced plate so that they are fueled for their performance.
Rachel, I think all of your content that you provide online, especially free, is so wonderful. And I just want to personally say thank you for what you are providing for the dance community. And I'm wondering, what can we do as No Box to kind of help spread the word of this, maybe to people who don't really understand or know how to implement the value of nutrition and health, or like, for example, like studios, often like in ballet studios, you grow up and maybe, you shouldn't be eating in front of the director or things like that. And there's this like whole culture around that. So how can we as a digital dance company kind of help spread the positive message of these tools that you offer to these communities that might not know that they need these resources?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I mean, first, thank you. I'm so happy that you feel that way, because I definitely spend a lot of time and energy on this outreach, which I think sometimes I end up spending more time on this outreach than I even do on the resources that I get paid to do, which is, I mean, I'll be honest, I have a passion for this. I have a passion for dance and I have a passion for nutrition, and I feel extremely fortunate that I've been able to fuse this together. So I think that my passion in both of these realms allows me to have this insane drive to want to put all these resources out there for dancers.
Because your content is incredible. Like your videos, just step by step, the detail, the specificity, it's wonderful.
I really appreciate that. I think back to where I was 10 years ago. I was burnt out 10 years ago. I literally remember, and I'll never forget, actually standing in class and looking at myself in the mirror and being like, kind of what I said to you before in regards to just like, I asked myself, I was like, you know what? I don't think I can sustain this for however long. I don't think I can sustain dancing as much. I think I was dancing 7 hours a day, and I was obsessing over eating healthy. I was teetering on that orthorexia realm. And I was like, you know what? And I have a major sweet tooth. So I knew that I was restricting and not allowing myself to enjoy the foods that I grew up loving. So I knew that something had to change, but there just wasn't anything out there. I mean, we had Google, I'm not that old. We had Google, and I was able to find something, but nothing that was specific for dancers. Everything was for sports. And that's where I was like, you know what? I saw a great opportunity for myself, because again, I started developing that passion for health and eating healthy. But I needed to stop myself before it became orthorexia, before it was too extreme. And I needed to learn how I can work to find a way where I can love healthy foods and healthy recipes, but also have room for the, you're going to think I sound crazy, but have room for the trip to Burger King that is, at the end of the day, is not going to make or break my performance. And to teach other bunheads out there that like those experiences are not going to make or break your health. And if anything, when you enjoy a craving that you're having, that's only going to benefit you. And I swear, when I finally realized that, and through my schooling, I would say this is probably now like 6 years into my schooling as a dietitian, I never danced better. I never danced better. I was free mentally from all of those food restrictions, and I was actually able to focus on my technique and my artistry as a dancer. So I don't think that answers your original question. What was your original
Well, I'm
question?
glad you shared that. It was just how we could bring this, what you're doing to other communities.
Yes, I really do appreciate that. Listen, I think that for our generation and for Gen Z, for all of us younger folk out there, we are very lucky that we have the power of social media and the internet. Instagram and Facebook have been, and even Pinterest have been very helpful for me to get all of these ideas and all of these resources out there to dancers. I'm constantly getting DMs every day just saying like, you know what, thank you for that post. Like I relate to this so much and I didn't even realize it was an issue type of thing. So I think it's a matter of just creating your own content. You can always link to mine in the sense of, let's say you want to do a dancer Q&A. You're probably going to get a lot of questions about common diets out there. Well, lead them in the direction to dancenutrition.com, because I answer a lot of those questions, and just really sharing and spreading the news about the YouTube videos, the articles, and even these downloads.
I did have one question, kind of going back to the food restriction. Is your process more about rewiring the brain to just stop punishing, essentially, when it comes to those food restrictions? And
Yes.
Would we end up then having them less?
Mm-hmm.
Because
I noticed you posted too, like on Instagram, like not labeling things as like good food and bad food.
Yeah.
That's like part of, I don't know, it's like related.
One thing I want to make clear is that even for someone like me, who's technically this expert of like food freedom, I like to call it, I still have those thoughts. I still have thoughts that I'm constantly taking a machete to like get them away from me. You know what I mean? I still have thoughts of body dysmorphia where I don't feel good in my body, but I know how to respond to those thoughts now. I know to tell myself that that's coming from diet culture. That's not coming from a place of love, and that's not going to get me anywhere.
Right.
So
yeah, lots of people need to hear that.
I give dancers the tools. I give dancers the tools to better respond to these thoughts and triggers, because they're still going to have them. I really think it's very, and I would be shocked if someone truly was at this point where they don't have triggering thoughts. With so much access to social media now, it's very hard to not be triggered by an image or by a comment or a post or whatever. So
or
it's
comparing yourself
Listen, we all compare. I as a dancer, I've grown up really learning how to essentially critique myself in a mirror, right? That's what we do as dancers. That's what we have to do in order to improve our technique. We have to critique ourselves. So in order to make sure that criticism is not turning into these thoughts where it's like, oh no, I don't like my legs, I now have to restrict my food intake, I think that's really key. And I teach dancers how to break that mindset. So you can think of it as rewiring the brain, but you're not necessarily rewiring the brain in the sense that you're not going to ever get these thoughts again. It's more of rewiring your response to these thoughts.
Create, discuss, and advocate for art. No box dance.
Do you have anything else that you wanted to share with the audience?
I think we covered everything. I think sometimes I worry that sometimes I can look like I focus so much on just disordered eating that I don't do much with the, I guess, more fun, like physical stuff with nutrition, like teaching about protein and carbohydrates and fats and what those benefits are for the body. But that is a major part of what I do. And honestly, my love for the science end of nutrition and for what those macronutrients and even the micronutrients like calcium and iron, my love for nutrition came about by learning about what these do for our body. So I guess I just want everyone to know that also is very much what I do in regards to helping with disordered eating behaviors.
That's very helpful.
All right, time for our Flash 4 portion where we ask all of our guests to answer 4 questions in a flash. Are you ready, Rachel?
Flash 4.
I guess.
If you had to recommend a resource to our audience, what would it be?
Biscuit Ballerina has a great blog and she links to a lot of these professionals that I'm talking about. I honestly don't want to single anyone out because I don't want to forget anyone, and there's a bunch that I'm close with and that I really like. So I would say Biscuit Ballerina does a great job at providing a resource for dancers to kind of find more comfort in that gray area.
Great. What was the first dance you saw?
That was Sleeping Beauty by ABT, and I was probably like 11 years old.
Do you think that social media has a positive influence on the dance world? Yes or no?
It can have a positive impact on the dance world. It can also have a very negative impact on the dance world.
What is your favorite social media platform?
I'd say Instagram.
Thank you so much, Rachel. It was a pleasure speaking with you today.
Yes, thank you. And again, for just the resources that you create and that we're able to access them through the digital space. And we will be sure to link all of those in our show notes.
Well, thank you. It was more than a pleasure to talk to both of you. I look forward to seeing everything that you do, and you as well are doing a great job of just raising really great awareness for dancers.
Thank you,
Rachel.
Thanks for taking your time to tune into Dance Behind the Screen, a bi-monthly interview series where we go behind the screen to question process, product, and social media. Be sure to follow us on social media at KNOW Box Dance. See you next time, and don't forget to say no to the box.